I'm just going to introduce the topic, and then we'll get into the discussion. You want water? So with population growth, climate change, and weaponization, by the way, this is pertinent what's going on in Gaza, weaponization of food and water and energy, and unsustainable standards of living in many parts of the world, we're approaching a planetary limits on primary resource of water, energy, and food, among others. With business as usual scenarios, significant gaps are projected. These resources that we're talking about, the nexus, as we talk about, are also inherently interconnected and form a complex and dynamic system with synergies and trade-offs. Interconnected, what he explained to me the other day is like 70% of the water we use is to make food, okay? So that's the connection. And then we produce energy from food and everything. Yet management of this interconnected system is done as always been the case within disciplinary limits and knowledge. This approach is failing, and we must look at system-level solutions. Policies, behaviors, and practice matter. Coherence must be pursued. All of those interesting interactions constitute the scope of this session that we're going to be talking about. So we have Dr. Rabi Mohtar, who's an avid researcher, in that complex, the nexus, as we call, of water, energy, and food. And currently he's at Texas A&M, where he has his own lab and research team. And when I looked him up, he's been all over the place, and I think this is your topic. So my first question would be, what is the impact of global policy, especially what's going on right now with Trump, the agencies being prohibited of doing their jobs, or funds being limited? What's the impact of global policies on national food security? And also a follow-up question, how are national agriculture policies impacting the balance between food security and the contribution to local GDP? Okay, so I'm going to have you take it from there.
Thank you, Walid, and thank you for the organizer for this just inspiring session. And it's hard to really follow what we've heard from the keynote speaker to the first panel and to the last conversation. So it's really a pleasure to be here, and thank you for taking the time and to give me the opportunity. I'd like to put some principles, because I think we come from different backgrounds, and the terminology do matter. So words do matter. I'd like to start by distinguishing between food security and self-sufficiency, because sometimes we don't make that distinction. It's very important we do that. So I'll give you some examples. Saudi Arabia is one of the most food secure countries in the world, because they have managed to build, not rely mainly on their local domestic self-sufficiency, local production, but they have built a very resilient food supply and trade. So back to your point about the importance of the trade that we just talked about with the tariffs, it does impact the trade part. It does impact our ability to move commodities, mainly food, to countries where they rely that. So self-sufficiency is our ability to produce that locally. And then there's a lot of sustainability in issues. So for example, I lived in Qatar for several years. It used to cost more of the milk to be produced domestically than to import it. It was a deliberate decision by the government to do that, because they want to have what we call sovereignty. So no country can have sovereignty if it's relying on external food supply chain. So I'd like to make that distinction between food security and self-sufficiency in terms of the food. The other part that Walid talked about, the nexus, it's very important to really realize that we have been living in a disciplinary world. We look at, for example, I remember back in the 90s, my first trip back to Lebanon after many years during kind of the peace, I was invited to talk about at a conference on water and food. And I was given the floor right after, I'm not going to name the minister at the time, you probably can figure it out, proudly presenting two plans sitting at the head of the Ministry of Water and Energy, gave 2 plans. And my talk was actually about the nexus of water, energy, and food. So I had the intervention to talk, Mr. Minister, do you talk to yourself about the interconnections between these two sectors? You talked about 2/3 of our water goes into food production, which is significantly high. The sad reality is the farmers like myself do not have affinity for water. Because when you have a farm that's not giving you a lot of GDP percentage to your economy, and you've got next door the powerful, in Lebanon, for example, the powerful tourism industry, they're going to make more money, so they have more affinity to that water. So what do we do to our future water supply, and making sure that we secure our food supply, not interrupted by the allocation? So that 70% of water is no longer going to be the future. Wake up to the reality, myself as a farmer, wake up to the reality, how do you manage the future food globally with a limited water supply? The other sad reality is our energy is also hungry. So there is a lot of reports that more or less, I mean, in the previous administration about weaning the energy from water. A lot of our water is actually going, about 35% of our water goes into cooling towers for the energy supply. So a good example would be, with this boom of AI, have we looked at what's the water and energy footprint for this data-hungry algorithms? That's something we have to realize, that there is an impact on this boom of AI on our food supply, on our energy supply. So that's something that I'd like to level that playing field. And I'd like to emphasize a simple fact. Food security is not an agricultural issue. This is not for the farmers. This is a national security issue. It must be looked at at the highest level of the government. So a food security is not Ministry of Agriculture duty. A food security plan is when the data scientists, when the social scientists, when the ag engineers and electrical engineers and the entire society sits behind a plan, a national plan, that yes, food security is important. So we need everybody to be involved in food security, not those people that wake up in the morning thinking about it, but all of us. This is a national security. This is an issue that must be looked at that level of importance. Otherwise, we're not going to get there. So that's something that I'd like to emphasize. So with all of this complexity, we need to do a few things. We need to understand that complexity, but we also need to disentangle that complexity. So the interconnections between water and food. So for example, last week there was an article, many of you probably, because it's not on your radar. So a drought in California would impact me sitting in Texas. It does impact me because a drought in California would increase or decrease the hydropower. Big part of California's power is hydropower. So a drought is impacting the energy supply in Texas. That drought is impacting the water supply because there is less water in the dams, and the water supply will be disrupted, but it's also have impact on the food. So this very, very complex system is important for us to understand and disentangle it. Now, one last element which actually sits on your backyard is all of this impact health.
Yeah, that was my next question.
Which we can, so that we need to understand that system. We need to look at these interconnections. And most importantly, what do I do with that information? How do I get people involved in decision making at the ministry level, at my level, in the household, and in the technology, because it does have an impact on technology development.
And one of the things I want to ask you about is food engineering. Have you heard that term?
Of course.
Okay, good. So what do you think, how's that going to solve? I mean, that's the AI of food, right? How's that going to solve the problem? You know,
okay, I've been doing AI. We didn't call it AI then. I mean, there's a lot of, we've been doing this for all my career. I've been building tools and decision support systems that allow us to make better decisions based on data. So there's a lot of technology now that has roots for centuries. I think that there certainly is a mosaic of things that we need to look at, including that food. But I think we have to realize one thing, that the food system, not only in the US, not only in Lebanon, globally is broken. We have to fix it. So there's a lot of data that we invest in healthcare related to foodborne illnesses because of the food system is broken, then actually we make money out of the food. So the food system is broken. It has given a huge impact on our nutrition and our health, and more importantly, on the land, water, energy footprint, and carbon. So we need to revisit how we interact with land to produce food, our diet, our interface with the I mean, I mentioned earlier 70% of our water supply, fresh water supply, go into food production. How much of that is actually used, how much of that water is actually used at the photosynthesis level, at the molecular level, used to produce the carbohydrate? Very little. So we have ways to go in the efficiency, in technology, in engineering, more importantly, in the social behavior. Yeah. And that's at the core of all of this. How do we change our behavior in diet change, in interacting? Again, the system is broken and we must fix it.
My other thing I was thinking about coming here, with Trump's new, the tariffs that are going on, and also restricting some of the funding to agricultural agencies. I mean, what's your take on what is the impact, in the short term, you think?
I like your model about the coffee. So I think it's really hard to let's see. I don't know the impact. Let's look at let the الطفل يركب, and then we can look at. I don't know the answer, but I can tell you.
Ask AI. Ask AI.
I did ask AI, by the way. I did ask either way. I know when this event is happening. I asked AI, when is this event happening? It told me in Boston. So AI, there's way still. Exactly. So there's a lot of. Okay, I mean we sit in the behind. Our lab developed a lot of data that is used by AI. We develop a lot of AI tools that allow for better decision making. We have long ways to go in terms of getting comfortable with what AI can get us. But back to your question. The world, in fact, if I'm sitting at the Nobel Peace Prize, you know who I give that prize to? I give that prize to the farmers.
Yep.
Because the farmers are responsible for peace and stability worldwide.
I don't know why this, I'm not going to use the term pronoun, the J.D. Vance,
so farmers,
Chinese peasants. I mean, that's an honor.
Back to your question, farmers are the ones who are peacemakers globally.
Yep.
Most of the food we eat in the morning comes from these farmers all over the world. So I don't know where my grain I'm eating today, where is it coming from? In Lebanon, as an example, the majority of the wheat, and Lebanon is a country that rely on wheat. Most of it is coming from Ukraine, Australia, or many other parts of the world. My point here is when you have a trade, not food, when you have a trade disruption, that's going to impact that food supply chain. Who's going to pay for it? You and me are going to pay for it. So that's one. So the trade war is going to impact mostly people who are relying on that trade, mostly poor people over the world. The global south is going to pay a big price of it. Yeah. The science, research and science, I mean, just yesterday we heard that a big grant that we got was retreated. So there's in the short term, I see a lot of impact on the current policies, when our ability to actually do as business as usual. But I would go back to the earlier comment in one of the panels. Science, and in fact, one of my former colleagues was asking me about while I was in Qatar. I spent 3.5 years in Qatar. On my exit, I was writing reflections, and that was published. You could look at it online. I'll be happy to share that with you. It's not my area. I'm not a policymaker. I'm just a nerd engineer sitting behind a desk trying to look at for a better future. In my reflection, a culture of innovation requires peace, requires freedom of speech, requires us to be innovative, requires us to be in an environment where we dream. So if I wake up every day, do I write about air quality in Qatar, and I'm going to be receiving a phone call, why did you do this article? I won't be creative. And I feel this is my biggest fear. When academia is not free to dream, then that's for me, this is a trouble. When I worry about Thank you. When I worry about, did I write the right thing on my social media stream? Should I do this? Or when I hesitate, for me, this is an alarm. We need to be living in a place where we are free to think, free to express, and free to be. And that's not the environment that I see conducive for innovation.
I know you're looking at me, but I have one more point. I just looked at this bottle of water. In the audience, which is more expensive, this or a bottle of oil? Not olive oil, not olive oil, oil and petrol. Huh? Okay, good. This one's more expensive, and which takes me.
Can I comment on this?
No. Let me finish my point. I'm the moderator. Sorry. So no, because I feel that oil is a curse as far as I'm concerned. My late uncle in 1969 wrote an article in Lisan al-Hal, I don't remember which one, and he was like mocked a bit. He told them this is the beginning of our end in the region, and we're witnessing right now. So, which takes me back, I mean, I'm looking at the conflicts in the world right now, and it's what's happening like in the Golan Heights, in the dam of Yarmouk and Wahda, where our friendly neighbors have already encroached and trying to control the water. Egypt and Ethiopia, there's a conflict of water. I wrote down Turkey and Syria has been ongoing issues. I mean, you think the next wars, the wars are already being fought for water. So do you think this is going to be the next war besides AI and all that stuff that we're
I want to go back to my earlier comment about farmers being the peacemakers. Yeah. I remember there's a famous speech by Anwar Sadat when he stood and says, Egypt will not go on to war anymore. And he paused, and everybody says, oh, that was after the peace treaty with Israel. And then he continued, unless our water resources is threatened. So I don't think we're going to get a water war because of farmers, because of the Ukraine farmers, because of the Australian farmers supplying the global South market with food. And I think we need to be thinking much closer look about that. I think I was, at the beginning, I was very much against the globalization and the global supply chain. But I think that's critical at the moment to really maintain peace and stability globally. But before I close, I want to come back to this. Remember, water is not the same. This water in a bottle that is coming out of a desalination plant that has a high energy footprint is not the same as the water you drink it from the faucet. Keep in mind, water is not the same. So the energy footprint of a desalination, and keep that in perspective, is 4 times more than a water that I receive in Lebanon. So my water footprint in Qatar when we were living there is 4 times more in terms of energy footprint and carbon emission as compared to a spring that we used to drink. My friend here in the audience, we used to go to Hammana and Faluga and drink from that. So remember that. And remember that the deep aquifer that we have, that we're losing. So remember the water footprint, the energy footprint, the land footprint of our activity. So when I'm losing food, 40% of my global food supply is going to be lost. I'm not only losing that food, I'm losing the land that is used, degraded because of that production. I'm using the energy that's used to produce it. I'm using the water. So think of this interacted nexus system.
The nexus, yeah.
Just to cover what you're saying about water, early 70, when they tried to put the pipeline from Saudi Arabia to Lebanon, Maurice Ismail, he mentioned one thing. He said, please put one more and send the losing water to the sea, because this water will be more expensive than the oil at the time, and they didn't do it. But just for what you say about the milk in Qatar, I think maybe we didn't meet, but I was at the origin of this project Baladna when they brought the cow from Netherlands by first class. And I was at the origin of this project with Kamal Abdallah, if you know him.
Of course.
And it was greatly what we've done on this project. But they didn't make it for they made it because when they made the
Embargo.
And it was in this subject that made it. And the other things that, just to close it, about AI, people, they discover AI today. And in 1991, I was in a big project with Walmart that gave Walmart another advances about what we call the smart supply chain. And I was proud that I shared this project with Walmart in 1991 that elevate Walmart on the upper level of all supply chain, what we call smart supply chain at the time. Yeah. And that's because AI is not today.
Yeah. Thank you.
One more question and then.
Rabi, you did such a wonderful job explaining the nexus between energy, water, and food that so many people maybe don't think about or just aren't aware of. The question for you is what are some recommendations you have for how we help educate and activate folks who have the ability to shape policy, to shape practices, to shape culture, to shape climate change around these issues and cybersecurity and AI.
Did you say climate change?
Yeah. Have I thought about climate change? How do we influence, and I'm thinking in terms of both at the academic level, at the citizen level, farmer level. I can say that growing up on a farm in Nebraska and the difficulty we have with making a connection between these issues and the people we elect who then shape our policy. And at the corporate level.
Thank you, Susie. This is a very important question. My only reflection there is accountability. And I would say we need to make I'm talking from a US perspective, we need to make our elected officials accountable. Our job in academia is to show a roadmap, is to show the trade-offs of actions and with numbers and backed up by data. Accountability is the issue. I survey my students in every lecture, and they never fail. By the way, the young generation are all aware, on board of sustainability issues. They all want us to act on sustainable development, but that's not the action that we see today. I think the only thing I would say, we need accountability from our elected officials to represent what the general public. I think there's a misunderstanding, there's an awareness that needs to happen, which is not there. So we need to change our behavior, we need to change our policies, we need to change our technology. So I would say there's two elements here that are missing from this discussion. Private sector. I think we need to have the private sector on board. But what I meant by private sector is not the CEO. The CEO has to report back to the board of. So we need to really inform, educate, make those decisions based on sustainability issues. And there is more focus. I haven't heard anything today. We have heard about technology, conservation. Conservation has to be part of our plan. It's not only about building it bigger and building more of it. But thank you. This is a very important question that we're challenged with. So thank you.
Thank you, Professor Rabia. This is wonderful. And you're talking about policymakers. Most policies and economic system we deal with today were invented when we were less than 1 billion people on Earth. We're 9 billion now. Do you think we're going to starve if we don't? Will the planet be starving if we don't get our act together and do exactly what you said?
Absolutely, you're absolutely right. The reason the nexus now is important is because we don't have the same buffer we used to have. We used to have plenty. We used to live in a world of plentiful. Now we don't have that. So we need to optimize, and we need to look at efficiencies, and we need to look at all of the, as a system of that interconnections. You mentioned something in policies. I would add one critical word, which is coherence in policies. So if we let the water sector, which is, we have had discussions with the bank for a long time. All of the policies that we see today are disciplinary policies made in a silo. What we need for the future to bridge that gap of all of this gap in resources, our climate change, the emission, we need to have coherence in the policies. So what does a policy in water, impacting the food, impacting the health? How does an energy policy impact the other sectors? That is what's missing. Sitting on the table and allow for a dialogue among all of these disciplinary decisions and look at a system-level solution. The only example I could think of today that's happening is in Jordan. Jordan has the king, and by the way, I'm not promoting Jordan, but there's a lot of issues with the political system, and that's not my point. My point is that because it's a kingdom, the king has made a deliberate decision that I want to establish a nexus. So they're using some of the skills and expertise we have in our lab in terms of backing up with that data, and we're working closely with them. They're building a nexus unit that sits above at the prime minister level that coordinates national decisions connecting water, energy, food, and health. That's what's needed. Now, in a democracy, how would that work in a democracy? We don't have good examples. But because our funding, our governance, our decision-making is done in silos. So how do we make these decisions made in a coherent way where one decision doesn't impact the other negatively? That's going to be a big challenge. We don't have good examples. We have small projects at the project level, a lot of good examples. But at the national level, we fail to have the Minister of Water, Minister of Food, Minister of Agriculture, Environment, and Education and the finance sit together to have this national plan. And SDG was a platform, the Sustainable Development Goals, but it's not going anywhere. And especially with the global governance today, I think the last 2 weeks ago, that we regressed significantly by a lot of discussions doubting the UN as a body for governing the Sustainable Development Goals. So I'm not too hopeful, but I think the young generation is the one who's gonna flip that balance. It's not us. Yeah.
I think they're kicking us off. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.